Okay.
All right. Put the recording on. Oh, wait. What's going on? Oh, hold on. Maybe if I...
I already had it turned on.
Oh, maybe it timed out.
Well, you better be here to talk, son.
Yeah, right.
You're my chief star witness.
Awesome.
I couldn't have been there, I was someplace else.
All right, this looks like it's going to be an interesting meeting. All right, good evening. We're here for the Improvement and Services Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 24th, 2016. We're joined by Alderman David Netting and filling in today in the substitute role, Alderman Mark Stoyer. Alderman Jerry Wisbicki has been excused. Alderman Joe Moore is in transit. We're also joined by Alderman Brian Danziger and staff, including Director Steve Vernier, most famously known as Space Cowboy, but also going by the name Maurice. All right, item number 1, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on January 27th, 2016.
Move to approve.
We have a second? All in favor?
We need one amendment.
Sorry.
Inadvertently, we neglected to reflect that Alderman Danziger and Alderman Wisbicki were excused, and that Alderman Stoyer attended to make quorum. So we just ask that you amend the meeting minutes from the last meeting to reflect that change.
Would someone like to make that amendment?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion, a second for the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion to approve the minutes with the amendment.
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 2, approval of the agenda. If there is no issue, I'd like to move the purchasing manager number 15 immediately after number 3. I believe that's your only item, right, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll move 15 immediately after number 3.
I'll motion for that.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. All right, item number 3, request by Mr. Jeff Tomczyk to rescind the nuisance litter and solid waste charge of $103.12 at 605 12th Avenue. Staff?
We received a letter from Mr. Tomczyk appealing the citation from the City Inspection Department. This was for a lot nuisance cleanup back on November 4th. We have information here from the City Inspection Department, from Chad Rothmeyer, the Housing Zoning Inspector, indicates that the property was initially inspected on October 19th, and a notice was submitted to the property, and a re-inspection was scheduled for November 2nd. Followed up the complaint of exterior clutter, confirmed violations with exterior sink debris, etc. On November 2nd, a re-inspection was completed. The inspector identifies that exterior issues were still present, and he scheduled for a lot cleanup and issued a re-inspection fee. November 3rd, staff mobilized to the site and completed a lot cleanup. Invoice was subsequently generated in the amount of $103.12.
And that was just for staff time, correct?
Correct. So this is,
Re-inspected.
no, this would be, this is actually a nuisance cleanup.
When was the first date listed? You said
October 19th was the
October
first
19th
date,
and
yes.
November 2nd.
And these lot cleanups are
Was the
initiated through the inspection department.
Yeah, that was the follow-up inspection was on November 2nd. The cleanup occurred on November 3rd, and then November 4th is when the remittance was sent out. All right, I know we have Mr. Tomczyk. If anybody would like to open up the
Motion
floor.
open the floor.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Tomczyk, if you'd like to come up, if you don't mind just stating your name and address and just providing any information for us, sir.
I was called by Dr. Jeff Weirix to go to 12th Avenue, 605, to remove 3 stainless steel sinks and wash stations that were there. Plus there was some other garbage that was in play. By November 2nd, that material had been taken away. What was left behind, I think you should have some photos, unless you don't, I brought what was left behind now,
Okay.
not after the cleanup. Was basically some pieces of paper and like a little wooden or a little plastic foot wash
Okay.
that, as far as I would deem, is not considered, you know, we're not talking the original sinks that we're talking about here. And Those are all removed by the time frame that was asked.
Okay.
Uh,
I
here's-
apologize,
here's a
we're
picture of the
circulating
sink.
stuff
Here's
right now.
this Picture of the sinks. They they were clean, neat.
Mhm.
They were restaurant material that we picked up off of a job site. We brought it over there, and then when we were told to move it, we did. And apparently Chad, which I don't know, because normally I would have gotten a call from Donna
Sure.
or
Asylum,
whoever would
usually,
have
sure.
said, what the hell's going on? And, but, I mean, here's my pictures of what I took pictures of the following day. I mean, there's really nothing there. We took everything out of there.
Okay.
Now, it's just bad karma that we got charged. The doctor asked me to come here before the P&I and explain that he called me, I followed through, and then he received a letter with saying that he owes us money for cleanup. I followed the channels, I went through the mayor's office, talked to Andy there, and he said the best way to go through this route is to talk to you.
Sure,
So,
sure.
Full circle, we're here in front of you. We're not in the habit of making our lots dirty, we're not in the habit of collecting garbage in our lots. The doctor is he owns a lot of properties and very well kept, all of them. This is just something that slipped through the cracks, but when he received the letter, he called me and I took care of the sinks.
Okay. Well, and again, I'm just curious, are you the owner or
Proper
the
main-
facility
property
manager?
maintenance guy,
Okay, you're the
yeah.
property manager for
Yes, for
that.
all his units in Green Bay.
Okay. Gotcha. So that's the only reason I was confused.
No,
I know
no,
you mentioned the
that's
doctor's
just,
name.
that's how I play into it.
Yep,
I
just
get, I
curious.
get a call, I do my job, I send him an invoice and then
Sure,
he
sure.
gets paid.
Okay. Have we ever had other issues with that property, Mr. Grenier?
That we do not know at all.
Okay,
I don't have any
that's, didn't mean to spring
prior.
that up on you, so. Because we're looking at some photos right now, and there does seem to still be some debris that's located on the lot, so, and we can show those to you as well, if you'd like
I
to see
think
them, Mr.
let me
Townshend.
just take a peek.
You bet. Now, I will fully disclose that you're right, the sinks aren't there, so, I mean, they're,
No, these are recent pictures.
no, this is the
Oh.
original, sir. This
Oh,
is the original
none
inspection.
of this was-
Nope,
none
nope,
of this
nope,
was-
we're just seeing a before and
Oh,
after.
yeah, before and
Yep,
after.
just like a Jenny
Yeah,
Craig
there's like
commercial.
a bucket below a faucet, I mean, that's pretty much, and then piece of, this is what he cited me for.
Okay.
I mean, this is, and you know what? I work with the city real well, I'm not here to just, all I'm saying is that, you know, this is an unjustified billing towards the Dr. Weir's, and if 2-3 pieces of stuff were inadvertently left and not raked up, we apologize for it and ask that, you know, this won't happen again.
I guess the concern I have is the fact that inspection came out twice to look at this, and it didn't seem like anything was done.
Oh, this
Yeah,
is the
the
original,
sink-
sir, sorry,
yeah.
there were the sinks and whatnot, there was other material.
Yeah, the sinks were the big thing. I mean, that was kind of
Well,
commercial looking. And
It is.
those were removed immediately here.
yeah,
They were gone the day that I got
Sure.
a call from Jeff.
No, we appreciate that.
So, you know, we acted promptly. As soon as I got the call, it was done that day. I called a weekend and said to Jeff, it's done. A couple things got left
Sure.
behind, but-
Well, and again, I think you just kind of stated that a few things got left behind, and I think that's maybe a little bit of the issue here, and again, I appreciate the work you do, and I appreciate the fact too that you're able to get on this and resolve the majority of the concerns. I think part of it might be the fact that, look, I mean, this was a property area that was under some scrutiny, and I know if there's something that I've been requested to address, I usually make sure that I do as thorough a job as I can. Now, I agree with you, and I do understand that you did take action, and I want to acknowledge that. And I want to make sure that we take into consideration the fact that the primary inspection that was done back on October 19th had shown very reasonable change from the inspection that was done on November 2nd. So that's something that I'm definitely going to weigh when we look at this. I don't want to monopolize the time here. So Mr. Stoyer or Mr. Nenning, do you have some specific question?
Like I said, I'm just looking at these pictures, and, you know, I know a lot of times that when a complaint comes out, you know, it'll take a day or two, that type of thing. I don't know, can I ask Steve well, we'll have to close to talk about this.
Well, you can ask a question if it's relevant to
That's real, I just
Mr.
wanted
Tomczyk.
to know what the time frame was as far as when a complaint's called in. Normally, and I've done this with inspectors, we'll call them, and within a day or two, they're usually out there and take a look. and there might be some back and forth between the owner or whoever and the inspector. And then they'll go out, when they go out a second time, that's usually when I find that things start picking up a little bit as far as like what happened. So I guess I'm just trying to get a little sense of,
Well, the initial on-site inspection by inspection department was completed on October 19th.
That's the first
So
set of
those are
pictures
these
that you're
That's the
saying,
first
yep.
set of pictures.
Right.
The second set of pictures were taken on November 2nd.
oh, I've got the 4th of November.
Those are dated the 4th, but they're from November 2nd if you look at the,
Oh,
I'm sorry, November 4th, there is.
November 4th.
Sure.
So,
But these, I'm looking at these and I don't see the same,
That's the side of the house, this is the back of the house.
Well, that's the before and after, sir.
see, I wanted to look at,
That's the before. So that's the
right.
October, and then that's the after the
Well,
Mr.
I'm looking at this and it doesn't look like it's the same.
No, they're different angles of the house, so, correct.
Okay,
And what I will tell you is, this is not an activity that's driven by DPW or DPW staff.
right. That's
We're called
inspection.
out by inspection, and we perform the
Right.
duties that inspection directs us to do.
Right,
We're only really dealing with the cost associated with the
right,
cleanup.
exactly.
Yeah.
so in terms of the fees that we charged, apparently there were 2 reinspection fees or 1 reinspection fee?
Well, the
or how-
reinspe-
What was the charge?
The reinspection fee was $50, and that's not part of this. What was,
Yeah, this is only the labor. This is
Correct.
only labor,
what we
gentlemen.
have here is labor and equipment charge plus the admin charges. So this was for 2 folks for a half hour, plus the equipment, and then the $20 administrative fee that goes along with that. That's part of our standard
that's standard.
service charges.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with any of the citations.
Is there anything that, as far as time that goes with that, or is that, if it's just $50 flat fee?
It's time-based.
What-
It's time-based, and there is
Time-based.
there is a minimum because it
Mhm.
includes travel time. So
So
it-
generally, you'll look at $50, maybe a little bit up, and then it
No,
can
no.
go.
The other thing you need to consider is when we do lot cleanups are performed after normal work hours, so it's automatically on overtime. So what this represents is a half an hour of overtime for each of 2 individuals, plus 1/2 hour of equipment time, plus the administrative markup. So total labor charge was $48.77. Administrative charge was $20 plus $34.35 in equipment time. So we're looking at a total expenditure of $103.12.
Okay, now you're Mr. Tomchek, right?
Yes, I am,
Okay.
please.
You didn't state your name before, so, I understand, what you're saying on the sense that you work with this, the owner, these are properties you take care of, and you have pride, I understand that, What is your take from what Director Grenier said as far as the fact that people had to be sent out, there was time and labor involved to clean that up? So are you saying that that's unjustified and that we should eat that money per se?
I say that, that there wasn't enough of a mess left there to be having to send out. There was just some papers
Well, I'm
blowing
just-
in.
Well, I think in looking
No,
at.
these are the before, this is when the inspector first got there. This is what he saw. I removed all that.
Yeah, Mr. Story, the second
Right, I
set,
know.
yeah.
This is what we're saying is bad. 2 wrappers and a 5-gallon milk, 5-gallon jug behind a residential house. And this is no way construes with, we're not dumping garbage there or anything. It's a 5-gallon bucket, and if the
Yeah.
guy, if
Well-
something blew in overnight, something blows in overnight, and
Well, when you clean this up, I mean, you took care of all this, but
we
there's
took care of
still.
what's on the letter. The
What
sinks.
was on the letter?
Yes.
Okay.
We attempted to satisfy the city, and then what I'm a little bit miffed at is Donna is generally the one that does that zoning inspection area, because I know her, and all of a sudden I've got this Chad who I don't know and didn't call me. Normally it's a one-on-one. When Ken Lowline was in this area, him and I had a relationship where if he didn't like something, he called me and I took care of it overnight. Because I'm diligent to keep the city, I don't want to say cold off my back, no, I want to cooperate with the
Sure,
city.
no, and we
And
understand
that's
that.
a relationship I pride myself in, is
And have you had
cooperating
any other,
with.
have you had any other situations like this in the past?
Oh, I got a folder of files from the city where we've got properties that rentals
Right.
that get into a dilapidated state, not because of the owner. It's because of the renter, and all of a sudden, the owner gets the call or the letter, and then it's my job to go take care of it. And I generally work one-on-one with the inspector. That's why when I stopped once to see Chad. When I couldn't get a hold of him, I went right to the mayor's office, and I thought, I've got to do something about this. This is $100 that I didn't leave
If-
this mess.
Yeah, if I may though, sir, I mean, again, I'm sorry, Mr.
Go
Starr, I
ahead.
need to cut
You may
you
go.
off.
No, go.
Apologies, sir. I guess, to your point though, you're talking about the fact that you were aware that somebody had called about a complaint regarding the property and some of the debris that was left on the lot. And then you had taken action, and I understand that, and just wait for it. So you took action that you felt was appropriate. All inspections was doing was going out there, doing that follow-up secondary inspection that they did on November 4th. And even though I may disagree with your perception, we are basing it on our inspections team assessment of that lot. And if the inspection team says, we still see some things that do not meet compliance, that's when they initiate DPW to go out and to clean that lot. So if your concern or complaint is about their interpretation of the acceptability of your cleanup at that lot, that unfortunately, and I'm not trying to push this off, I'm just saying, unfortunately, that is a debate between you and the inspections person. And if you believe there's a difference of opinion that's there, I get that, but again, we are relying on our inspections team to do their job and to follow what we believe is to be compliant. And I know you say that you normally have a direct relationship with those inspectors to try and talk this stuff through. It sounds as if the inspector was just simply doing his job and following the requirements and guidelines that were set above that. And they felt that the cleanup that was done did not meet the compliance standards. And that's, I think, what led to the cleanup by DPW. I wanted to add one other piece to this, though, sir, and I think this is maybe the key component. I know that you believe that this was done well within compliance and that we should completely ignore the remaining debris that's out there. And I agree with you that from what I'm seeing, it seems pretty minimal. The challenge might be the fact, though, that, again, that's your assessment and that's my assessment. That's not the inspector's assessment. And also, if this was a call-in complaint, it could also be based on the fact that there are some people or somebody that was calling, complaining about that lot, that were very persistent about the level of compliance that was being fulfilled. And again, we're not only trying to satisfy you, sir, and we're not only trying to satisfy the tenants at that property, we're also trying to satisfy those individuals in the neighborhood that if they had complaints, as a city, we're required to respond to.
Okay, what ordinances are broken with having a 5-gallon bucket in the yard? Because now we're dealing with, you're saying that an ordinance was not, an ordinance was broken, okay? What ordinance does not allow a person to keep a 5-gallon bucket in their backyard?
And again, sir, I am
And
not,
that's not interpretation, that's simple, and the wind blows clutter in.
I
So I need
concur.
to know the statute on that too, to justify this to doctor.
Okay.
So what I would like to say though is,
sure.
we accept the fact that we had to send Public Works in. And it's unfortunate, but we feel that it's over the top that this inspector, who could be new and maybe just may have called in the National Guard for nothing, because I don't see anything other than a couple pieces of paper, and that's subject to interpretation, correct? But I want to know the ordinance that was broken, that you can cite us for. I can see kitchen sinks, I can see old garbage, I can see a lot of the stuff, old plywood laying around. That's called building materials and refuge. But a couple of blow noses and a 5-gallon bucket, I can't see construed as.
Are you saying that was blown in?
Well,
It looks like it was placed there.
I don't know about place, but,
Well, it looks placed.
oh, the bucket? Oh, no,
Yes.
the bucket wasn't blown in, there's a water spigot.
'Cause you were talking about things
Yeah,
that were
we draw
blown in.
one. Oh, no, this was blown.
That might be
Yeah,
a
that's
compliance
not-
issue.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, blown in. And I mean, if it,
Pardon me, sir?
this is the only one that I think, is,
Sorry,
it's
I'm trying
a foot washer, and I don't know if someone wanted it, or one of the guys didn't take it,
to-
but maybe he wanted it, I don't know.
Does it make sense?
Well, you know,
But-
to me, the unfortunate thing about all this is that it could have been cleaned up very easily, and I guess, I'm not sure that it was cleaned up completely and then some litter.
I'm not saying that, Dave.
Blew over.
I'm saying that
Yeah.
something, that's an alcove where this has blown in. This is a time effect situation where this corner of the house,
Well, yeah, but
because I used to live there,
that didn't blow in after.
so I have to, didn't blow in overnight, no.
Debris.
Okay,
It did blow in. It wasn't placed there by anybody there. The house is
That's what I
vacant for the
thought.
last 6 months.
okay.
So,
Unless there's people hanging out on the side of the building or something. I don't know, it just seems like there's a lot.
and I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. It's just so I'm just trying, the
No,
doctor
we
asked
aren't
me-
either, yeah.
I would just
Well,
as soon put it aside and you won't see me again.
No,
Give me 2 steps and I'll,
We're just trying to make sure that this is a good learning opportunity for everybody involved here, though, too,
Right.
because part of me finds it interesting the fact that that you have such a good relationship with the inspectors, meaning that again, there must be a reason that you have such
well,
constant
I
communication with
have a
them.
lot of rental properties.
Mhm.
And I know, and I usually, I grew up in the trade. My father always told me respect the inspector. That was I
Sure,
learned that
sure.
when I was 17 years old. You know, and so I don't want to say, Ken Lowline and I had a beautiful relationship. Whatever he needed done, and I know he followed the guidelines of the code. That's what I live by.
Well, if you're asking for what ordinances were involved, I mean, it's on the report and notice of noncompliance. So it is 8.12 Green Bay Municipal Code, as well as ordinance 28.20512, which it states exterior storage of scrap, lumber, junk, tires, toys, batteries, trash, or other debris, which,
Okay, so you're gonna label that debris,
Well, let 'em-
that's,
Let them finish.
okay.
yeah, including without limitation of enumeration discarded objects or equipment such as motor vehicles, furniture, appliance, farm or manufacturing equipment, building materials, or litter as defined by, and that's, again, overfill of dumpsters, which may be empty city crew owner expense. Again, I think it's coming down to your opinion versus the inspector's
And
opinion.
I don't wanna go, I just.
Yeah, no, and I'm just trying to, because you asked what.
So we have a
what-
huge gray area that, and I'm willing to, we'll say, if I get this passed, I'll make sure that we don't have to cross this path
Well, I think we
again.
can find some middle ground here, sir, I do, I really do.
Okay, well, that would be, I'll take what I can get.
No, I
No,
think we can find some middle ground for you, sir.
it's, Dr. Weirks asked me to show up, and
No.
I'm just here as ordered.
I appreciate that. We do. We appreciate the conversation on this. Any other questions for
I
the
have
petitioner?
None right now.
Mr. Netting?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr.
Motion to
Tomchek.
close the floor.
You have a
Unless
second?
there's somebody else.
Second.
All right. I'm sorry, did your colleague?
He's here,
say-
no, he's one of the movers, that's
Okay,
all.
good. Fair enough.
Well,
See,
that's
I-
fine.
yeah.
All right. Return regular order. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Gentlemen, thoughts? Mr. Stoyer?
Well, and I appreciate Mr. Tomchek's statements, that he's worked very well with the city and such, and he had a great relationship with Ken Lowline. I used to work with Ken Lowline, so I know Ken very well as well. So, I don't know, like I said, I'm looking at the before, I'm looking at the after pictures, and I've seen a lot worse, believe me, in different areas. But I agree with you, Alderman Danziger, in the sense that there are citizens that will call in. A lot of times they're the eyes for us alders. A lot of times some situation will be developing, and they'll call, 1 or 2 people will call every other day. Maybe another person will call 3 days later. And so we get like 4, 5, 6 calls, hey, there's garbage out there, there's this, there's that. And we go through our inspection department to make sure that they come in and take a look. And we have no vetted interest here, there's nothing for us to gain here at all. I think we're just trying to follow what was done. The fact is that the inspection department came out twice, Public Works had to come out once. So it's a matter of saying, well, do the taxpayers, do they pay for that? Or you can promise to say that it won't happen again, and that very well could be the case, but we deal with people a lot that'll say, I promise not to do this, and then something will happen a year later or something. So, I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable right now rescinding this, but I'll wait to hear from my colleagues.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stoyer. Mr. Netting?
Yeah. You know, I'm looking at it, I don't personally have a problem with the bucket by a faucet. You know, I understand sometimes if it's out of public view, you know, if it's in the backyard and out of public view, but, you know, the litter around the property is a violation of the ordinance. You know, I'm sorry, I know it might seem nitpicky. Unfortunately, you know, it's all stuff that could have been cleaned up probably in a matter of minutes. You know, I agree with what Alderman Stoyer said, that, you know, there are complaints that come to the alderman, there are complaints that come to the city directly. And, you know, we send our inspectors out there and they've got to try to look at it uniformly. How would they handle any complaint that comes in? And, you know, it isn't because they know a certain person that they would treat it differently. You know, I think a notice was given about the cleanup that was expected. And, you know, normally if there are extenuating circumstances or something, you know, I could see making a rescission of the fee. But I don't think I would go along with rescinding it completely. Our people did go out there and perform a service, and if we do it for one year, there probably are dozens of others that you know, have had where our department has also responded to calls. So you know, if people feel that there's some kind of compromise in order, I might consider that, but
I'd be willing to listen to that too, Alderman Danziger. I don't know if you have.
Sure,
as far
well,
as
I mean,
compromise.
yeah, I think I've got some suggestions here that
Okay.
the committee could consider. Again, I mean, even though this is a dramatic change from the first set of photos to the second, which we all agree upon, and we could, you know, debate and undulate as to the level of cleanliness and compliance. At the end of the day, the inspector felt that this still needed to be cited. And that is actually out of our hands. We are not dealing with a citation piece of this. We're dealing with is simply the effort and work that was done by the DPW staff. Work that, regardless of our interpretation, was already completed, so we can't go back and change the hours that were applied. I think because we all are accepting the fact there's some gray area here, Mr. Tomczyk has been gracious enough to give us his time and his perspective on this. I know some things that we've done in the past has been cut the fee in half, which isn't a fee actually, it's just simply the amount. Now, I apologize, Mr. Grenier, are there some restrictions or limitations on that? Because I think we can still either remove the administrative fee or just simply cut the fee in half, correct?
You have some pretty wide latitude.
All right. I think we can also put in some push-ups there too, right? All right. Which you can have your colleague do. I don't know if you guys are open to either removing the administrative fee, which I believe is $20, correct? Or simply splitting the overall time fee from the $103.12 to half. To the,
Well, I'm willing to compromise a little bit on that too, but I'm not sure Mr. Tomczyk, I think he wants to completely rescind it, so regardless, if we.
I don't think that's something the committee, I don't want to speak on your behalf.
I'm just.
Well, Mr. Tomczyk made it sound as if he's just looking for some sort of middle ground here, and he's looking for us to extend some level of compromise here, and I think this is a fair compromise. This is my personal belief only.
So it's a $20
Is the administrative fee,
and the
correct.
rest was for the actual pickup.
The actual
The
work,
rest
which is
was labor and equipment
which
charges.
includes travel. So I can break that down for you. It's
Right,
$83.12, but if we were just cut the rescission down to,
Yeah.
if we just did it's $83.12 without it, you know. Oops. If we just did the time, if we did it in half, it's $51.56. If we minus the $20, $83.12. So we've got a couple options, so.
I'd be willing to look at half.
Yeah, half the total fee.
Yes.
Are the reinspection fees?
Separate.
They what?
They're separate from
They
what
are
we see
separate,
here.
and
This is
they-
Right,
simply,
this is just.
This is
Okay.
just for the
Public
time,
Works.
sir.
this is simply
Okay.
the
For the time
equation.
work.
Okay.
Correct.
I'll make a motion to do what Mr. Danziger has suggested and reduce the total fee by 50%.
Yeah, so that'll be a $51.56.
I second.
All right,
So
since,
that would be to rescind the original invoice.
correct.
Right.
And submit new invoice for 5156.
Can I ask about the re-inspection fee?
That's
here.
not our committee, actually.
We can't do that.
Okay, well, then I thank you for your
You
time.
bet.
And then, once again, it was a gray area. There was no easy,
Yeah.
I
there
feel
was
like,
not a door to open and shut on this.
no, I
Right.
feel like we've extended you quite a
Oh,
bit
I
of
think so,
latitude in this too,
I
so,
mean,
Meet you halfway.
yeah. Just like the Black Eyed Peas, we've met you halfway, sir. All right, we have a motion, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your
Thank
time.
you,
I appreciate it.
gentlemen.
All right,
Mr.
take
Tomczak?
care.
Thank you very much. Cheerio. All right, item 15. Report of the purchasing manager. A, request approval to award a contract to Eland Electric for $234,730 for electrical repairs and sandblasting and painting services for the Falling Star Ride. It's the Bay Beach project. Go ahead, sir.
The Falling Star Ride was donated to the parks by the Friends of Bay Beach, and it is in need of significant repairs. We hired a contractor to do some initial work and to give us a statement of work, which resulted in the bid and the bid summary that's in front of you. So we went out for quotes based on that statement of work to complete electrical repairs and then sandblasting and painting of that ride to restore it and get it ready for installation at the beach. Recommendation is to award a contract to Eland Electric, who was the low bidder, for $234,730. Potentially, there could be a $3,500 credit if an integrator is not required. I'm not exactly sure what the integrator is. It's a piece of electrical infrastructure,
Electrical.
Okay.
which they won't know until they perform some of the other
If you told me it's a
electrical
plumbing
work.
fixture, I would have believed you.
Yes. So the request tonight is for approval to award that contract to Eland Electric for $234,730.
And just procedurally, I was speaking with the purchasing manager prior to the meeting. This work is associated with a public works construction contract, so while not public works construction in and of itself, it is part of a larger project. That's why we were able to take this work through purchasing department as opposed to going out as part of the contract process. But expenditure of funds in excess of $10,000 does require council
Sure,
approval, so
sure.
we're bringing that to
Yep.
at this point.
Does Park and Rec have the money for this in their budget, or how's it going?
Yes, I believe Donnie brought this up maybe at the last
Yeah, it was a
Park and
transfer
Rec
of
meeting,
funds at the
and
last
there was
meeting.
transfer of funds from the Bay Beach account to the operating account. I couldn't tell you the account
And
numbers.
It is
234
sufficient
account
for
or
this
whatever.
bid?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
What was the 241 account or whatever it is there?
Well, I guess that was my question too, as far as if this is money that city taxpayers would be paying as opposed to the Friends of Bay Beach. Is there anything with that?
It's the Bay Beach Revenue Fund.
Well,
we don't get a fund.
it would not be part of levy-supported taxpayer
Correct.
funding. It would come from either the Friends of Bay Beach or the Bay Beach Enterprise,
So there's no-
Enterprise
Yeah,
Revenue
Revenue-
Fund.
No
Yep.
direct effect.
Correct.
to
It comes
the
directly to Bay
taxpayers.
Beach's
Okay, I
itself.
didn't need to know that. I guess the other question I had too was, 234,000, this is just the cost of doing business. I mean, the Falling Star Ride, how old is that? And is this just part of what happens with?
This is pretty much a complete electrical rebuild, and then it's sandblasting and painting of the ride. So this,
How old is the ride? Any idea?
offhand, I don't.
The
this-
ride is about, I guess, 1970s,
Yeah. I
1980s
was gonna say,
vintage.
I
It's
thought it
been
was,
around a long time.
Yes.
Okay, I
Yeah.
just needed to know that.
I got
in
photos of
terms-
it,
And I
so-
understand the fact that, things do need to be upgraded and that, but, you feel comfortable with this.
yeah, they've got photos of it from the last meeting, so I'm trying to find it.
Well, I guess we got the ride donated, and this is what it'll
With some
cost to
strings
get it,
attached,
Yeah.
right?
to get it operating so that it can generate some revenue.
Are we gonna be the biggest jungle gym, or we're gonna have to do
The-
something with
the-
it?
The Friends initially had intended to fully fund the restoration, but it exceeded, the scope. So Donnie and her team worked out an arrangement where some of this will be funded with the revenue account, and the Friends of Bay Beach will support some other projects. So Donnie was satisfied that this was in everybody's best interest, and that
I'm comfortable.
In the words of Roy Rogers, there is no such thing as a free puppy.
What show was, what episode was that?
December
I've seen a lot of
15th,
those.
1954.
Quit dogging him with questions. All right, any further discussion? All right, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the low bid award and the contractor low bid.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much, sir.
Have a good evening.
You too. You can stick around if you'd
What
like. I
date,
know.
what date was that again?
Mr. Rosendahl would love the company, I'm sure. Are you here for a specific item? How rude of me,
I'm
sir.
just hanging out for a few more items.
Is there an item you need me to pick up?
It's like, good.
Okay. Are you just here for the entertainment?
Just like to see your pretty faces.
Oh my goodness, wow.
Rose-colored glasses?
Exactly. Item number 4, request by Bay Settlement Investments LLC to be on the 2016 road improvement schedule via the developer-built option for Eaton Heights Phase 2. Staff?
As you may be aware, we have in our subdivision program, which has been largely non-existent over the past 7 or 8 years, we have 3 options whereby residential subdivisions can be constructed. The first option, option 1, is our conventional subdivision package where a developer comes in, has a plat approved, and they turn that plat over to the engineering division, at which time we design the roads, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water main, and all necessary infrastructure. Option 2 is kind of a hybrid option where the developer engages the services of a consultant engineer to complete all the design work, including the plat and design of municipal infrastructure. The developer then provides us with a copy of those plans and specifications for the infrastructure project. We review those to ensure that they are consistent with city practice and city design guidelines. Then we let a public works construction project or projects for that construction, and a development invoice is submitted back to the developer for those improvements. The third option is something that started gaining some traction back in the mid-2000 era, around 2004, 2005, and that is the developer build option. Under the developer build option, we execute a developer agreement with the developer that explains terms and conditions, how these infrastructure amenities are to be constructed, the process whereby the approvals are granted. The big thing that's available to the developer at that point is the contract is prepared and led by the developer. All work is privately financed, but is fully inspected by our staff to ensure compliance with city spec. After the development is completed and all the infrastructure has been installed, the developer comes in with a request to dedicate those infrastructure improvements to the public. And if everything has been constructed the way that we approve of, and the terms and conditions of the developer's agreement have been fulfilled, we then make a recommendation and council will accept the dedication of those improvements. The developers really like that developer build option, especially back in the middle of the last decade, because one of the options that was available to them with private construction as opposed to a public works project was that they did not have to publicly bid that, and because it wasn't public works construction, it was private construction until such time it was dedicated, they were not obligated to pay prevailing wages. Now, subsequent to Act 32 of 2010, which was the budget bill that followed Act 10, there are now provisions within state statute that allow for a residential or a subdivision that has at least 80% 1 or 2 family homes is exempt from the prevailing wage requirement. However, it still has to be publicly bid. And some of these developers have construction companies that are part of their membership, or they have relationships with earthwork
Monopolize
contractors
the work with that, yep.
where they can negotiate more favorable terms than we can under a public bid. So What we're looking for tonight is an approval from the committee authorizing us to draft and execute that development agreement with the LLC, Bay Settlement Investments LLC, and then authorize the director to execute that agreement.
And with that, we still do the approval on that, though. You guys still review that, though, and we're.
Absolutely.
on that,
What we will do is, we've got a stock standard template. Based on the size of the development, we calculate what those development fees would be and what the anticipated cost is going to be to that developer, so we fill in those blanks. That becomes the basis for the agreement. We send that agreement off to the developer, they sign it, we sign it. The developer, again, will engage the services of a consultant. They will design all the infrastructure. Once they have that design work completed, they submit the design package back to engineering. Engineering does a thorough review. We ensure that it's been designed consistent with our design process. We remit that approved set of plans and specifications back to the developer. They will execute a contract with a contractor of their choice, and we provide a full-time inspector out there to ensure that construction has been completed consistent with our
And they pay
practices.
for those, that.
They
portion of
pay
it,
for
so-
everything.
All right, I just wanted to confirm, I know we still have a role in that, so go
Yes,
ahead,
we
I'm
do.
sorry, Mr. Stark.
Thanks, Steve. I was just wondering, look, okay, you gave us those three options, and it sounds like this last option is for this particular project. I suppose this would not go with every other project that maybe comes forward. Are you saying that this is kind of the way we're going? You know,
We have had several projects built under the developer build option. We've had several projects come in under option 2, actually, recently, where it's been consultant design and city let.
Is it, well, I guess the question I had too is that, if the developer is developing the property, that, engineering would come out and look, make sure they're doing it correctly. Would you necessarily come out more often to look, to make sure they're doing things correctly? Because if they're not, and
No.
they have to change, I would think that could be a problem.
No, we will provide full-time inspection services, same as we would on one of our own projects.
So it's just the same.
The only
as every
difference is that
business.
the contract, the developer is responsible for executing the contract as opposed to it being a publicly let. In this particular case, my presumption, I haven't had a direct conversation with the managing member of the LLC, but I would presume that the reason that they're doing this is this development is coming a little bit later in the year than what we normally would see. Ideally, under an option 1 or an option 2 build, the developer is required to have a final plat approved and submitted and approved by September. That gives us through the winter to do the design work and have the contract out on the street. By the developer coming in February, they now have to fit within our queue of when we let projects, and we already have our projects queued up, ready to go, so they're gonna fall to the end of the line. From a timing perspective, they can go faster and get this thing in yet this year if they let it themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that benefit. Have there been any negative experiences since we started doing that?
The only one that I can say that had any negative connotation to it was very much an extenuating circumstance, and that was the original Baird Creek Preserve project. And that had nothing to do with the developer build option, it had everything to do with the real estate market bubble bursting.
Sure.
I can see the benefit in using this option. I'll make a motion to approve.
I had one other question, if I could. I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Dave. I was just gonna ask you,
Okay, hold on.
Steve, what other, with this option 3 that is out there, are there a number of other areas that have been done using this in the city?
We have executed quite a few of these, actually.
And they have actually, can you give me an example? One or two?
Well, as I mentioned, Baird Creek Preserve was
Yeah.
completed under a developer build. We did the ponds at Baird Creek, which is just on the opposite side of the road on North Huron at Indigo Bluff. That was under a developer build. I don't remember offhand. I believe Stone Gardens, which is north of Baird Creek and on the east side of Huron Road, just sort of south of
Right.
Fire Station 7. That was, I believe that was a developer build.
Well, okay, that's good for me. I'm just saying that And these developers, you know, they may do very light type work, but, you know, there will be some differences, I would suspect, because it is a different developer doing it, so, and that gives you the uniqueness of the various neighborhoods. Is that part of it?
Well,
You know, it's like anything else.
again, the old driving factors were timing, prevailing wage requirements, and ability to negotiate contracts as opposed to publicly letting. The prevailing wage requirement has largely been eliminated due to action at the state level, but the timing aspect and the ability to negotiate that contract versus us publicly letting it are still two driving factors that would have, and this particular, now, we have an LLC, and those LLCs typically change from subdivision to subdivision. However, a lot of the partners who comprise the LLC are common. So the managing member of Bay Settlement Investments LLC, we have worked with this individual on multiple projects in the past. We have done option 1, option 2, and option 3 with this very managing member, and we've had successful projects out of it.
And I suppose that like any business, they're looking to maximize their profits and whatever need be.
And in this
And there-
case,
there's-
again, I haven't had a direct conversation with this developer, but my presumption based on the request is their profits are going to be maximized if they're able to get this work completed
So
and
it's a
start
timing.
selling lots.
Well, yeah,
to
I mean, that's the
2016.
thing, was the timing. Mr. Denny
Okay,
mentioned that, too.
I'm fine with that. Dave? go
Yeah,
ahead.
I would just add that, you know, it's basically city policy to give developers this option.
Right.
And unless
Choosing it.
unless there's a reason not to approve it, I think, you know, I think it can work out quite beneficially, you know,
All right.
in terms of the developer getting the work done, and we inspect it just like we do if we hire the contractor.
Right.
So I'd make a motion to approve the request.
Okay, I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Grenier, for that wonderful explanation as always. Item 5, request by Alderman Zima on behalf of residents of Green Bay that the Public Works Department make a comprehensive study of the stormwater sewer system in Green Bay, and further that the department provide for council consideration an estimate of the cost of updating our sewer system to resolving the ongoing water problems that continue to plague the numerous neighborhoods. Wahaha. Also referred to Advisory Committee, held over from January 13th, 2016, Improvement Services Committee meeting. Staff?
On January 13th, we provided the report that was requested by Alderman Zima and went through it in some pretty decent detail. That night, Alderman Zima asked us to provide a copy of that report to all 12 of the alders.
Correct.
The following day, we did that by placing that report in each alder's mailbox. And the intent that was stated at the January 13th meeting of the Improvement Service Committee was to allow that report to go out to the aldermen to solicit comment from them relative to the contents of that report. I had a conversation with Assistant City Engineer Matt Heckenleibel today, and as of this afternoon, we have received no reports, no comments back from anybody.
That surprised me, because I know Mr. Heckenleibel, I thought, put together a very nice briefing as well at the meeting, kind of outlining not only the investment that's required, but some of the limitations of just simply enlarging some pipe here and there. I
Certainly.
mean, there are a lot of choke points and considerations we have. I'm sorry, Mr. Stewart, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, no, I appreciate the work that was done on this. It's just that, as far as the time frame to get comments back, was there a definitive time frame on that?
We provided a little over a month.
Yeah, and we actually made that in, I think we put that in the motion, or at least it was in the
Yes, we
minutes,
did.
I know, that we stated that we would be coming back to, yes, thank you, that we would be coming back at this meeting with some suggestions and
Okay.
requirements.
All right.
Did Mr. Zima have a chance to talk to you or Mr. Heckenleibel directly on this?
Has Alderman Zima spoken to me about it? He has not.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's what I meant, is he reached out specific on this
He
topic?
has
Not
not,
that,
no.
have you ever had a conversation? That's not the question.
Oh, no, has he had the opportunity? would
Well, I meant to
imagine.
say, has there been a connection between you
There has,
two?
no, Alderman Zima has not reached out to me in
Fair
this
enough.
respect.
Mr. Netting?
I did have a couple of questions or comments as I looked through it. You know, I guess, one thing that's really stood out on it is that the maintenance of our stormwater system is extremely important. You know, there were
Triple digits.
Yeah, there were statements in here about, you know, roots that were blocking the pipes, about guy wires that were struck through our stormwater pipes, about sediment that was obstructing the free flow of the water and so on. And, you know, obviously there are some design things and areas that we can improve the system, but in any case, we have to maintain the system, you know, better. You know, at least that seems to be the conclusion, that we have to find a way. You know, I know in reading this, our sewer crews, you know, have sanitary sewers to take care of as well as storm sewers, and the sanitary sewers obviously get the priority for, you know, obvious reasons. But it is important to maintain these as well as we can too. I do think that the projects that were identified here as being the priority projects, you know, are important to follow through on those, and, you know, to make some progress on this. As anything with infrastructure, it's not something you do all at once, spend $150 million, and you upgrade everything, but you do have to keep it up, or if you don't, eventually it will catch up. So I do think it is important to do the priority items that were identified in here. We might learn from some of those experiences. It did kind of strike me as interesting that we have so many outfall locations around the community, and so many of them are submerged.
That was my concern,
Yeah.
I think. And
Yeah.
and Steve, I've talked to you here and there in your office or a couple of times, just talking about some of that. I have brought this up at other times too, infrastructure. And Dave, finish what you gotta do with design.
Well, I was just gonna make a couple of other observations. Well, one question I had was that when you make improvements to the storm sewer system, does that, could that relate to the floodplain designations? In other words, could a property that currently is in the designated floodplain be taken out of it if
Change its status.
it cannot?
It will not. The floodplain is established by FEMA,
Right.
and it's based in our area primarily upon the elevation that waves would run up to in a flooding situation.
Okay. Okay, that was.
We're more,
Okay.
our floodplain is more governed by the wave run-up number
not sea
than it is
level?
about a static
Okay.
flood level.
Okay, I accept that. I was just wondering if that was the case. There were some things in here that I found kind of interesting. There was an example of, in the southwest part of the city, where manhole covers were removed by citizens, apparently.
That is correct.
To relieve. Have we followed up on those, or do we follow up on those? or what-
We do
What
and
can
we
we do?
have.
What can we do about it?
What we've done is we've tried to, we've attempted to identify who the offending party is and provide the education that
Don't do
you
that.
can't do that. The response we've received is, well, it provides another place for the water to go.
You knew who did it.
Well,
Yeah, pretty good idea.
we had somebody either identify another person, or we had an admission that something had happened, especially if it was someone that removed a sanitary lid and allowed stormwater to go into the sanitary system. So we identified the reasons why that was not a good thing to do, and further advised the individual that continued action could result in citations.
Right. Okay.
Now we don't, we think we know who's doing it, but nobody's admitting to it anymore, and we're having a very tough time catching somebody in the act. What we typically find is the cover either still displaced or placed back onto the manhole, but it's definitely not the way that it should
I
have
was
been
about
on
to
there.
say, yeah, you can tell it was a yeoman's job on that.
Yes.
Is this more isolated type case?
It is more isolated, but it does happen.
And they're taking it upon themselves saying that, hey, if we
Correct.
relieve that, we're gonna relieve the pressure, because, you know, there are times where the covers will blow off with storms, and I
Yeah.
would.
Very rarely though, sir. They would
No,
take
but
quite a
I,
bit.
you know, I've heard of it, so
Well,
I
and
think
that-
they're probably thinking that, hey, you know,
Get rid of it.
Yeah, the
it
increase
won't
of
happen if we take it
Mutant
off.
Ninja Turtles hasn't helped either, but the other part of it though is they actually think they're doing a service though, and I think that's what Mr. Grenier is alluding to, is that from a Samaritan perspective, they think they're actually helping
Yes.
out. Which, I don't begrudge them that, but again, that's actually not, in the long term, adding value to the relief.
Especially if the sanitary and the sanitary and the
Sewer,
storm mix
yeah,
up.
that's.
Well,
We
the
don't want
the
that.
problem that we have, the two biggest problems that we have with allowing the stormwater to get into the sanitary is now you're adding sanitary flow, which could then cause sanitary backup.
Backups, precisely.
So you're causing a problem that wouldn't have existed otherwise.
Right.
The second is strictly an economic problem. That flow, everything that goes into our sanitary system, we get charged by
Yes.
GBMSD.
Yes.
So there's a financial impact back to the city. You don't want to treat clear water that doesn't need to be treated.
Yeah. You know, I wanted to follow up on
Yeah.
that a little, as one of the comments in here is that with that big storm in December last year, that they had, that the Met had measured a high volume from
Yes.
neighboring communities in the sanitary sewer. And do we know why that is? But apparently that's part of the problem. Do we know, are there ways that that's occurring? You know, obviously they're getting charged for it, right? Just
It's
like we are.
related to what we refer to as infiltration and inflow, which is a combination of factors. Infiltration and inflow can be other than competent pipes, so if you have joints on older pipe where groundwater can leak through the joint, if you have a crack in a pipe, and groundwater can leak
Seepage.
into that. Sometimes manhole segments aren't necessarily watertight, so especially if you have
You get the
older
seepage
blick or
there,
rock
sure.
manhole.
Yep.
Or some well-meaning citizen pulls a cover off of a manhole and now you've got a 2-foot diameter hole
Mhm.
where
Sucking
6-inch
that
deep
water.
water is just flowing down it. Presumably, a lot of these higher flows during rain events are due to I&I issues. One of the challenges that we now face is Green Bay Metropolitan Sewage District has changed their allocations on I&I, and they're no longer reporting I&I. So what they're simply looking at is a flow at a flow meter, and the way that the billings work for outlying municipalities that discharge into the interceptor system, all other communities have flow meters on their lines. Then those lines tie into interceptors, and all the interceptors flow down to the GPMSD, and they ultimately come together at the plant. So the individual municipalities have flow meters, they measure the flow at the plant, they subtract off the municipalities, and we wind up with everything in between.
And then we're getting charged, okay. I
So
see what you're saying.
we're actually being charged not only for any
Our
I&I
stuff.
on our system, but we're being charged for the I&I on their interceptor systems after that point where everybody.
I don't know what can be done about that, but, you know,
Yeah.
that seemed to me
We
to
have
be-
tried, and the
yeah.
answer is absolutely
No,
nothing.
because once it's in the flow, there's nothing we can do.
Correct.
But that is part of the problem here, obviously. You know, we can do all that we can to try to improve our stormwater
Infrastructure, yeah.
system, but if there's still that much seepage of stormwater coming into the sanitary sewer.
Well, and that's why,
in the
as
communities.
part of our capital projects, every year, we go out and we do televising, closed circuit televising of our different basins,
Mhm.
and that's what generates those basin sanitary projects. Sometimes we will dig up and relay older sanitary lines. Sometimes we can get away with putting a cast-in-place pipe or a liner, and those liners help alleviate some of those I&I issues. We're also looking at, when we do our basin televising, we do take a look at our manholes. We've got some tools that we can use for helping to rehabilitate the inside of those manholes to cut down on I&I issues and things of that nature. We continue to do those. We exercise those options whenever we have the ability.
Well, Steve, I remember we had a map, and I'm a map guy, I like maps. And we had areas that were shown in the city that there were these issues.
The hot spots,
The
yeah.
hot spots, so to speak. And I don't have that in front of me, but I do remember
Yeah.
vaguely, do you have a copy
Yep,
of that?
most of that was predominantly downtown. They had a stretch there, but yeah, go ahead.
So I guess, okay, in my district, for example, I mean, you know, we have neighbors that are calling in, keep the sewer drain clean of debris, et cetera, you know, helping out, and I understand that, all of that. But I've had Public Works come out, and they will go in and film an area, you know, for a block or two. And it seems like it's more a reaction, because you're going to an area and you're checking that out. So you might check it and say, okay, we haven't checked this for a while, it's fine right now. Is there any way besides this, like, report, or, like I said, I look at things graphically, is there something that we have right now that shows a combination of the age of our infrastructure, as well as when it was checked? You know, I'm asking for a number of things. It might be a number of, you
Well,
know,
I know they have a report on when the lines, or the
Well,
pipes are checked, but I don't know about the age piece of it.
the age
Do
or.
we have some sort of a comprehensive report? We don't.
Right, and I understand it's a big, big project, I understand that. And I think what Alderman Denning was talking about was that, you know, we're looking at, there are some areas in the central city, you know, near west and east side and along Barrett Creek, it looks like up in University Avenue. I guess the concern I have is that it would be nice to know, okay, these pipes are 60 years old, made out of this material, they need to be replaced in 5 years, 10 years, something like that, where we could try to be a little more proactive rather than just being reactive. And I don't know if we have that capability right now.
Well, one of the things that I would caution you on is I think we're getting to a point right now where we're mixing our discussion on sanitary and storm.
Okay?
Okay? With storm, the biggest issues that we identified, we've got some basins where the amount of impervious area has
Or we're exceeding what the capacity
grown
is.
beyond
Yeah.
what was originally anticipated.
Mhm.
So that would be Lambeau, is a good example of that. And Lambeau is being addressed by the Packers organization with some on-site detention basins they are required to build.
They're doing that
That
right
were
now.
Correct.
that was
Yes.
conditioned in the approval on their expansion projects. So
Right.
those types of things,
Parking spots.
and I explained it at the January meeting, that you can either build a pipe that's very large that takes all of the water at once, or if I can delay some of that water from entering the system until the first water to enter has already passed through, I can take the same volume of water through a smaller pipe if I meter it out over time, okay?
That's kind of the same concept
That's
of
what
mini
the,
sewers.
Correct.
well, and
Except
that,
on a large scale.
that's what the Packers are doing, is they're building a very large retention basin, so they're retaining that water on site
Until it can finally.
until the street water around that area has already been flushed through the pipe, and when there's capacity in the pipe, then they'll let theirs go. Okay? That's one thing that can be done. Second item that we have, that we know of, is we wind up with street ponding, okay? We don't like to call it flooding, it's ponding because it goes away. It ponds up and it goes down. And by and large, most of the issues that we respond to are ponding issues. Most of the issues that we have on stormwater do not result in property damage. They result in what we call inconvenience, okay? It stays within the gutter, it stays in the street, never leave, but it's inconvenient. People don't like having to drive through 6 inches of water to get home, okay? Some of those issues are a function of not enough inlets to allow the water to get out of the street into the main. When we identify those issues, we have supplemented the number of inlets to allow that water to get off of the street and into the main faster. We have issues with undersized mains. They weren't sized appropriate to the design criteria that we use now. Most often, we find those in the former town of Preble. Preble is notorious for having undersized mains because of what their design criteria were versus ours. Fourth item that we encounter is that we have outfalls which are submerged. And that's simply a matter of hydraulic pressure and hydrodynamics. If the water level in the pipe is higher than what the discharge level, or if the water level at the discharge is higher than what the pipe is, somehow you gotta get that water out. You have to build up pressure within the system higher than what the static water level in the discharge stream is.
Otherwise it just sits there.
Otherwise, it won't push itself out, okay? That's a function of Mother Nature and what the stream levels are. And we are undergoing currently a high water period, so we have more submerged outfalls than we have in the past. We've identified on the near west side, so in Alderman Zimma's district, that would be the larger pink area that you see on the near west. What we have there are some small capacity lift stations that were constructed in the early 80s because under no rainfall conditions, water was backflowing out of the river into the pipes and surcharging the lines. So we put these small capacity pumps in to ensure that the lines were kept dry and that water was pumped out to the river, and some check valves were put in.
And where are those?
They're typically down in the Broadway area, okay? They were never designed to handle large capacity events. These were meant to keep the pipes dry in between rain events, not handle high flows during a rain event. We have identified a couple of those stations, and we have a plan to start addressing them by upsizing those lift stations.
Okay. Yeah.
The last item that I wanted to bring up, item number 5, the other problem or issue that we see is we are starting to see a frequency of storm events that exceeds the design capacity of our storm sewer system. We designed for a 10-year storm event. We are starting to see a higher frequency of high-intensity, short-duration storms, so what we call gully washers, okay? One simple answer that comes to us is, well, then start designing for a higher capacity storm. We can't do that. All these pipes have to flow downhill to the discharge. And the larger the pipe, the deeper you have to bury it so it's not sticking out of the road. We're limited by what our ultimate discharge locations are. If we start designing for higher intensity or higher return frequency, if we start designing for a 25-year storm instead of a 10-year storm, the pipe sizes it's not a linear relationship, okay? It's a logarithmic relationship. So the pipes get large in a hurry. We find that there's not enough cover. We can't get the pipes to stay under the pavement, and the costs go up astronomically. So everything is a cost to benefit ratio. It's risk to reward. And is it better to have some short-term ponding in the road that's going to go away in 2 hours? Or do we have to completely, we're talking, and again, this $150 million, Mr. Heckenley was very, very upfront that this is not a real number. This is an order of magnitude to give you an idea what the scale is. We had to make some base assumptions based on a study back from the 90s in order to generate that number. So I think it was grossly misrepresented within the Press Gazette story. But
Shocks me.
if we say on an order of magnitude, we're looking at $150 million to handle the known problem areas. If we were to change our design criteria, we could conceptually be looking at $500 million to revamp our entire storm sewer system to accommodate those higher flows.
Because that'd be a re-engineering of the entire
The
system.
entire system.
right?
No, you're saying the entire system for the city or within those areas?
For the
You
entire
can't
city,
just
you can't
re-engineer
just
within
spot
those
that,
areas.
yeah.
You
You
have
can't
to-
pick and choose.
Well, it'd be like doing plumbing in your house, where if you're
Right,
trying to
I
expand all the
understand.
pipes, yeah.
Yeah, you
then
can't take an
just
8-inch
do-
pipe and feed it into a 4-inch pipe.
Precisely, precisely.
And Steve, as far as the fact that, Green Bay, it's 580 feet or so above sea level, we're in a low-lying area. How much of the topography comes into play? Quite a bit. And, I mean, this was quite a wet area for many, many centuries, actually.
Well, actually,
It's a
if you-
low-lying, wet area, so.
If you take a look at that large rectangular basin on the west side,
There was a slough in there.
Exactly. If you come up
Yes.
in on third floor in our small conference room in
Seymour.
room 302, we've got the 1882 SIDAM plat of Green Bay and the borough of Fort Howard, and that slough is very prevalent. I can show you on the aerial photo where the original plats are, and they correspond. That 1882 plat is still every bit as valid today as it was when it was recorded back in 1882. And we can see that the slough area goes all the way up near West High through that entire basin. So what happened was the slough was recovered by filling it in. But if we didn't change the regional topography, all of that surface water still flows down to the slough, whether the slough is filled in or not, and results in surface
So that's where it
ponding.
goes.
You know, it's kind of interesting that the current design standard is built around a 10-year, 24-hour reoccurring storm event. Has that been the city policy for a long, long time?
Yes, at least 30 years. And a 10-year storm event is a common.
Yeah.
I would say, I don't have the numbers to back it up, but just anecdotally, I would say that is the common storm event. And again, cost to benefit ratio, what's the probability of having a property damage or life safety impact versus some short-term nuisance? The 10-year storm event is generally the accepted standard, I would say, more often than not.
Okay. There was one sentence in the memo that said there are newer design storm standards available, but the city has yet to adopt these new methods, as it's unclear how these new standards will impact existing and future storm sewer designs.
Well, I think that's what you were referring to in terms of
guess-
the engineering, yes.
I guess if they're, I mean, it really is an engineering issue,
Right.
You have natural occurring stormwater issues to deal with,
Well-
and you try to engineer it to have the least negative impact
Right.
on the community that you can. If at any point there are standards, I'm certainly willing to look at them. I think everybody, on the council would be. But you have to kind of look at this systematically and try to take care of the areas
Well,
where you've
and-
identified the greatest need.
Yeah,
You
if
know,
I can
take a
chime
look
in,
at it.
if I can chime in on this, I mean, my concerns, I really only had 3 primary concerns, which I think you mentioned with Mr. Heckenleibel's report, is addressing the key hotspots right now. I know we've already, kind of tagged them. We've identified what are some of the causes. Some of it's topography. Some of course, is just simply the level of runoff or the amount of runoff that we're getting far exceeding whatever we had planned originally. Not only the one by Lambeau, but I think the one by Beards Creek too was one that just more runoff than we anticipated. It's just a natural occurrence. So again, I mean, if you're looking for where, just from my perspective, where we would focus, it would be obviously on those areas first. Because those are the ones that are A, taking up the most resources, B, creating the most damage and impact to the residents, or at least it would seem so. And then C, I mean, again, I always say you go towards the areas that are the most recurring problems, and then you start chipping away at those. So that's kind of the first takeaway that I had. The second thing then too was in regards to the amount of reporting. I know Mr. Stoyer kind of alluded to this as well, but I know we're doing a lot of camera work. We're trying to identify where are some of the causes of the blockage. I know we even looked at what's that issue that's going on in London with the disposable or the baby wipes
The
being flushed.
Fogberg.
Thank you, Fogberg. So just, I'm wondering too if we just need to be more aware of, again, what are some of these causes? And I know trying to do an educational campaign is not always easy, maybe not always fruitful, but I think if we, and I know we're doing some, in fact, I think we're even approving some additional monitoring, well, maybe not today, but is that something we want to up as well? I mean,
We're actually very engaged in that, especially with stormwater, because
Okay.
we have our stormwater technician who's got a pretty good, a very fluent relationship with the Neighborhood Leadership Council,
Okay.
and she actually goes out and makes presentations in front of neighborhood associations, talking to them about adopting inlets, adopting our stormwater ponds, being good stewards within the neighborhood, being the eyes and ears, helping us keep those inlets clean so that material can get into the stormwater runoff can
Sure.
get into those inlets.
And that's,
I mean,
We've
we
got
talked, we talked about the 30-second spots, you know, I mean, I'm looking at that at other areas with the city, but, you know, I could see, you know, some public service announcements.
well,
of some
that's what I'm
sort.
saying, is, I mean, if, again, this is not only for the benefit of the citizens, but if we can find a way to engage them and get them involved, obviously, in preventative tactics, I think all the better for us. Even if it's just simply for 30 seconds, don't take away manhole covers. I mean,
Right.
something like that, just to help inform and
That would-
educate as to why. So, and I know it sounds,
Why?
yeah.
Why you shouldn't?
Exactly. I know it sounds corny to take that educational approach, but I try to look at bang for your dollar, and I think bang for your buck. Sorry, not bang for your dollar. I don't know why I screwed that up. Bang for your buck. Bang for your dollar. It sounds like a really bad bar trivia thing.
You need,
Anyway,
you need nourishment.
I do. So, with that being said, though, I'm wondering if that's another approach we can take, though, and maybe even leveraging that a little bit more. And the last thing that I was looking at from the report perspective is incorporation of additional technology or methods. I know we are looking at new retention detention pond techniques, even more porous surface areas. I know we're adopting that a little bit like at Bay Beach with the parking lot. I know that's something we can't just simply apply everywhere, but again, if we can start leveraging just some solutions that are not just pipes, I'm sorry, but that's not going to win the war for us.
Oh, absolutely not.
So, I mean, I think we need to,
It's a combination of things.
yeah, it's going to be a combination of things. If you want just my perspective from a strategy as well, I guess I'd like the recommendations from staff as to, all right, if we have a 20-year plan or a 30-year plan, I guess, you know, again, I'll leave that up to, because this isn't something you do in 10 years even. This is something that's going to have some very, I'm sorry, that's my opinion, gentlemen, but I think this is something that is going to far outlive us, or at least me, that this plan is going to take some time. So I think to help us, and maybe this is why you haven't gotten any feedback, is it's one of those elephants where, you know, you got to take one bite at a time, but it's going to take a long time. So I think if you were to put together a roadmap of, all right, these are the phase one steps that we could or should take, and then identify some of the cost functions from that, that way we're not dealing with this entire, you know, 150 million at once. We're looking at, all right, if we're only focusing on these hotspot areas initially, these are some of the tactics we'd like to employ. That's our phase one. And then we can see where we stand after that. That's just my opinion on this. That's, I think, the most comprehensive way to take an approach.
Well, I think Mr. Heckenleibo has done a fantastic job trying to document this and try to get a handle on really what's a difficult
It is.
engineering challenge. And, you know, one thing I was mentioning there was that with that engineering contract that we have for the Elizabeth Street area, that he was hoping to get some software that would
yeah.
enable him to do some modeling within our own department in the future. And, you know, things like that are steps in the right direction that might, you know, help to manage this situation better. You know, I do think it is something that we have to take a systematic approach. And you just don't do this overnight. And I think you also go into realizing that you're never going to take care of 100% of the problems, you know, for any size storm or any location.
They're going to be the outliers. There always are.
Right, right. So you do the best you can with the resources you've got, and you do some, you know, the major areas or the priority areas right now, and keep an eye on it, and, you know, in future capital improvements plans,
Right.
and where development occurs, you know, you look at incorporating in, you know, good stormwater management, and, you know, hopefully we'll get to where we got it going.
I agree with both your comments. I would like I said, and I had mentioned this before, Steve, I would like to see something where, okay, we would do this incrementally, or, you know, we'd have a phase one, phase two, phase three, if you will. And I like Alderman Danzinger's comments on that. I'd also like to see something that would show the status of where we're at as far as graphically, you know, seeing something that, you know, I can read a 7-page document and you pick up bits and pieces here, but if I can see it graphically where, you know, what the age, you know, unless we don't have that information, I'd like just to know what we know. What do we know out there? What is there a way to say, okay, this whole area between Oneida and Fisk, you know, north of Shawano up to Velp, was built, you know, at this time period. And granted, I think a lot of that has to go along with the development that happened, you know, where homes are built and such. You know, you usually would have to get the infrastructure in beforehand or at the same time. So I guess, I don't know if I'm asking for the moon on this.
Well, what I can tell you is if you really want us to start pulling that type of information together and you want me to have my staff start generating phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 over the next 20 years,
You're
then
gonna
you
need a bunch of people.
better be prepared for me to add at least 6 staff members.
So is this hiring out for an engineering firm to put this together, or? Because again, I mean, we need to make we need to make some sort of action.
I can either plan or we can do it. But we have downsized our engineering staff over the last 20 years to the point that we have enough staff to take care of the tasks at hand. But to sit down and generate
No, this is a huge
Addition-
undertaking. No, I get
No,
that.
additional
and
data, I don't have staff to do
I understand
that.
that when I brought it up. I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, many times if you had something in place that you could say, okay, here's where we're at right now. How do we go about it? I like the fact that we have, I don't like the fact, but the fact that we have these areas that we can concentrate on. I think those are the initial areas that we need to really
Well,
hone in on.
What we've come up with in the report is we've identified 9 basins that are of most critical importance. So what we'd like to do is to attack those 9 basins. While we're doing that, we will continue to investigate other basins around the city, and we will continue to chip away at the stone. I don't know that we're going to, in the near future, be in a position where we can give any kind of a comprehensive, this year we're doing this basin, next year we're doing this.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's asking for that,
kind of
though.
thing.
No one's asking for that.
No, I guess I was just trying to see with what you have existing right now as far as, does the GIS have anything as far as the infrastructure out there, as far as the lines, the number of sewers, you know, have there been repairs? Yes, there have, and on this, and this. I guess it's more or less just to give a, you know, maybe, like I said, like, I might be asking for the moon on this, but, you know, I'd like to look at a map of Green Bay, and you could, within a minute or two, say, okay, these areas we're fine here, things are being taken care of, we have no major issues, you know, we can last another 40 years in this area. What the types of material that are out,
Well,
or,
I have to interject on that, though. I mean,
Go ahead.
unfortunately, though, even that sort of intel, while valuable, is operating under the belief and understanding that all things are static or all things are going to be at predictable levels. And that's the unfortunate nature of this, though, is that we're dealing with very unpredictable situations. I mean, all it takes is for one line to break or one pipe to break, and that model is now disrupted. What we're seeing, though, is from a analytical perspective, some key basins that have shown repeated issues. And I agree with Mr. Grenier, those are the areas you want to attack first. I mean, that's kind of why I was my primary, you know, #1 issue, other than buck for your dollar, for what we should be doing here. To your point, I think that information is valid, but from a purely planning perspective, though, I don't know if that's something that is
With a
necessary
luxury?
now. To me, yes, that's a
Luxury.
luxury. I think that's more for
Yeah.
phase 2. That's just me personally.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we've got a plan here, and this is the plan, and it seems to me that it's well thought out. It's granted, it's a short-term type of plan, but it seems to me we proceed with the plan. Maybe we get periodic updates, like a progress report periodically on what has been done and what we've learned in the process. And, every year we review capital improvement plans, and the staff brings us together, brings forward a list of recommendations on, what priorities they have, and we review that and we approve that, and, I'm comfortable continuing to do that. I think if we, as aldermen, I think we know our own districts, and we know where there have been, problems within our own districts. But, I'm not sure that as an individual alderman, I could really grasp the entirety
city.
of the citywide, it's.
Well,
it's
you
a
almost
pretty
have to have a little bit
complicated-
of a geography lesson too, like I said, the SLU area, there's a lot of folks that don't well, they might know about it, but they don't
Sure. They may not know the
realize
impact
what
of
has
it.
happened
Sure.
because of that. So that's part of the education process, I believe. So
Mm-hmm.
I concur. that,
Okay.
You know, we need to look at these areas.
So are you suggesting that they present their proposal as a formal proposal, or that they should just go ahead and proceed like that would be your motion, Mr. Nenning?
Well, I think that what was asked in the memo is that DPW engineering is looking for concurrence into this approach that was suggested here and direction to move forward with this implementation. So I guess I would make a motion to do that, to concur with the recommendations of the report
And to proceed?
and to, right,
Okay.
proceed with implementation.
I just wanted to know from a procedural if we need
Well, I
to do the
think
presentation of it.
Well, I think procedurally, what we have is a report.
And you would
and
like
I-
us to take action?
Well, I don't know necessarily that you would approve or disapprove of the report itself.
It's
So I
informational.
guess what we would suggest is that we receive and place on file the report and authorize staff to proceed with implementation of efforts to address stormwater issues in the 9 basins identified.
Sounds like you've thought about this, all right.
That was my motion.
Since you have it written down. All right, we have a
I can
motion.
second that.
We have a motion and a second on that very random but surprisingly well thought out motion that came from nowhere. Nobody was pre-planning that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Did you get that, Mr. Grenier? That
I did.
statement? All right, good. I want to make sure you had that written down somewhere. All right, Mr. Rosendahl, do you need anything else from us? Is that it? All right. That was what you were here for, really?
I
Gosh.
think it was.
All right, now we don't have to.
Maybe we should have asked for his opinion.
Yeah, now we don't need to show anymore. So, all right, we can get going. Item number 6, request by Alderman Moore for a report on activities of our parking division in residential areas. I see the report. Staff.
We have provided a report in your packet, and this report very quickly outlines what our typical process is for nighttime on-street
Oh.
enforcement. There's currently a ban between 3 and 5 a.m. every day of the year. The reasons for the ban you've heard multiple times, for maintenance, quality of life purposes. If we have all 4 maintenance and enforcement maintenance and enforcement attendants on duty, which we typically have 3 days a week, 4 days a week, we typically have 2 MEAs on. If 4 MEAs are working, we can cover the entire city within that 2-hour parking window, so it's random enforcement, we just drive around. If 3 MEAs are working, we cover complaint areas first, then 1 MEA randomly patrols each side of the river, with 1 MEA concentrating on the downtown area, because we have the bulk of our problems in the downtown. If there are 2 MEAs working, we concentrate on complaint areas first. 1 MEA randomly patrols each side of the river for the remainder of the enforcement window, and the downtown kind of gets ignored. If 1 MEA is working due to absence or illness or things of that nature, it's strictly complaint areas, and then whatever time is left, we go downtown. We typically try to get the downtown every weekend night because of the significant amount of activity on weekends in the downtown. Snow events reduce our ability to enforce on-street parking because our MEAs also assist in plowing activities.
Interesting.
So Alderman Moore, when I spoke to him after council last week, when he offered this communication up, all he wanted was some sort of identification as to is it a random, do we kind of break the city up into zones and concentrate in a sequential pattern? The answer is both. It has to do with how many staff we have on duty overnight, the number of complaints we have, because we will always address, if somebody takes the time to call in to identify that
We'll
there's a
go there.
violation, we
Sure.
will take care of those known violations first. Typically on the weekends, we will hit the downtown first because of the more frequent violation of the no parking ordinance in the downtown. And then it is quite random. It's folks just out patrolling.
How many complaints do you get?
I don't have a number for you, but
A lot?
it's enough.
No, I get my share.
It's fairly frequent.
Yeah, I get my share for sure.
Do you find that with the downtown, with the restricted parking in front of establishments now on North Washington, has that helped that must have, I don't know. That's
Again,
that's
what
a
we're
police,
talking-
that's a police issue.
What we're talking about here is not necessarily a violation of posted parking regulation, it's violation of the nighttime prohibition,
nighttime.
so different,
It's a different,
different item.
Yeah, this is the overnight parking not restricted.
right, okay.
Mr. Netting?
Well, I'm not sure what Joe would say about the report or what his comments would be on it. I guess we can either receive it and place it on file, or we could table it.
I think he just
until-
wanted an overview of what the protocols were, just to know not only what the staffing is, but all right, what are their procedures for, well, running through a route of the overnight parking, so.
And if we wanted to change that, we'd
Yeah,
have to
he could
bring that
always
up
pick it up at the
differently.
council and stuff,
But this
so.
is more of a report, so
Okay.
I would make a motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second, receive and place on file. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Moore just texted me too, by the way, he's not gonna make it. Item 7, report on sewer section, air quality monitor, emergency replacement project. Staff?
At the January 13th meeting, we had a discussion relative to some air quality monitors that were failing, and we needed to replace them. Committee and council approved us to move
that's right, I
forward with
remember
that
this.
at a
Yeah.
cost not to exceed $5,000.
That's right.
Competitive quotes were secured. The meters were purchased at a cost of $4,337. However, while we were in that procurement process, we identified that there was some ancillary pieces of equipment along with those meters that we could purchase that would save us money in the long run. We currently spend about $1,100 a year to have a vendor calibrate the 5 monitors that we have. We found out that we could acquire those calibration units, the test gas, and the testing equipment for a total of $4,844. That's about a 4.5-year payback period. So our recommendation would be to authorize that, again, that's an expenditure, the total expenditure is gonna be less than $10,000. We're trying to make sure we're
No,
very
you want to report it
transparent
out. No,
with
I
this.
understand.
So what we're asking for is authorization to expend the extra $4,844 for a total of $9,181, so we can get the calibration
Yeah.
equipment.
This
because that's
typically
above
doesn't
the
need to be
5,000.
reported because it's under 10,000. Again, he's just letting us
Right.
know since it's a related purchase, so.
I would make a motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second, receive and place on file. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Brito. Item number 8, review and approval of McMahon contract amendment for 2016 stormwater facility vegetation maintenance in the amount of $69,725. Staff?
We have hired consultants in the past for maintenance at our stormwater management facilities. We have those facilities currently divided into 2 groups. We have the facilities out at the Bear Creek Reserve, our northeast pond, or the Bear Creek Reserve northeast pond, the Larshide Pond, the Mill Street Pond, and Baston Wetland Facility. Those have been awarded to McMahon in the past. What we're simply asking to do is to amend the contract, to extend that service line through 2016 in the amount of $69,725. The first plantings at the facility, when we originally installed those facilities, we had over 40 different species of plant. And what we do there is we're trying to mimic what happens in nature, knowing that over time, certain plant species will establish dominance and crowd out the remaining plants. Natural progression allows that growth cycle to happen and the dominance to establish itself. Phase 2 in that progression includes maintenance activities and not trying to reestablish those 40 species again, but simply to identify which ones have established that dominance and culture that to make sure that we have adequate plant coverage and that the facility is operating the way that it's supposed to. One of the things, just anticipating some questions, this is not an easy thing where we can just say it's a cost per pond because each pond is different in design, they're different in size, there's different plant compositions that were selected based on native growth, native vegetation in different areas of the city. So it really is kind of a specialized approach, and we like having the consultant who was originally retained in the design to be involved with the maintenance plan as well, because they know why they picked or selected those plant species, so they're better suited to help us with that management plan as we go forward.
All right. Any further discussion on this?
Sounds good to me.
All right, is that a motion?
Yeah. that was-
Second.
that was-
Very casual
Yes.
motion there. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Don't mean to give you any gruff, sir. I just
No,
wanted,
no,
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't
I like to
speaking
be
out.
casual generally. but
We
yes,
are.
I
No, no,
agree.
no, no, no. This is a very casual group. This is why I should be on this committee, which you have been the last 2 months.
Yes, I have.
Item number 9, review and approval of NES, which is not the Nintendo Entertainment System, a division of Robert E. Lee and Associates, contract amendment for 2016 stormwater facility vegetation maintenance, the amount of $69,125. This sounds very similar.
So very similar to item number 8, Robert E. Lee and Associates was involved with the development of the Royal Woods, Barina Creek, Burger Street, and Huron Cicla Ponds.
Gotcha, okay.
So we're looking for a similar kind of an approach here for the maintenance on those facilities and to hire Northern Ecological Services, NES, which is a division of Robert E. Lee and Associates. Robert E. Lee and Associates being more the engineer, the design company, and NES being the Ecological Services division, who would be better suited to, or more properly suited to handle the maintenance and vegetation management out there.
All right, got it. All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve it.
All right, do we have a second?
I will second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Item number 10, review a proposed plan to resurface Caroline Street as part of the 2016 Asphalt Street Resurfacing Program. Staff, I see the line in red. Go ahead.
Yes, Caroline Street is in our 2016 asphalt resurfacing program. So we're going to be bringing that program forward for a public hearing in the not-too-distant future. Before we brought that program forward, we just wanted to make you aware of Caroline Street, which is a little bit different. The blue line shows the limits of the resurfacing contemplated for 2016. The red line shows under a prior resurfacing contract where we had to pave in the gutter. And typically, we don't like to do that.
Okay.
Once you've paved into the gutter, to resurface that street a second time becomes exceedingly difficult. However, out here, we did send a letter to the residents to determine if they preferred to resurface the street again or to have it reconstructed. One resident voted in favor of resurfacing, one voted in favor of reconstruct, and 3 did not respond. So we have a split vote and an unusual circumstance where typically we would not pave into the gutter a second time. However, we recommend doing that because the gutter slopes won't drain, or the gutter slopes will drain, and unlike a lot of other streets, when we pave into the gutter, oftentimes we have to pave so far into the gutter that we wind up the aprons. In this particular location, we haven't gotten to that point yet, so we'll be able to pave into the gutter without going up the aprons and without causing other problems. It's a very unique situation, so we're simply bringing it forward so that you are aware of it. No actions needed at this time, again, because it's a unique situation and questions may come up during the hearing and
Sure, why this
deliberation on whether or
differs
not.
from, okay.
So we
you're
just wanted
saying
to make you aware of it.
We were talking about 6, is it 6 different or 5? You're talking about the people on the south end of Caroline,
Correct.
south side. So there was 6, you were saying?
There was a total of 5.
5, so
Yeah.
1, 1, and 3?
1, 1, and 3.
Yes.
Okay, now if that vote would have been 2, the other way, that they would have resurfaced, or you're just saying that they didn't give you the definitive answer?
Because there was not a definitive answer, it could wind up being a point of contention at the hearing.
Oh.
So we just want to get the information in front of you to explain why we're making the recommendation that we
Okay.
are.
It isn't really a majority rule kind of situation. You have to kind of look
No,
at each
but
situation.
I'm just saying, what,
Yeah.
as a citizen, what,
Yeah.
Well, and that's why he's bringing it up, because
Right.
there could be a question about the fact that there was no majority in terms of direction or guidance
Right.
from the residents. So.
Is it your
Okay.
district?
no, it's just south.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Do we have a motion?
Dave, you want to do it?
So
Yeah,
receive,
I'll-
place, and
It'll
file,
just
right?
be a received place on file.
I'll make a motion to proceed with
Actually, it's just
Or
receive,
receive
place,
and
and
place.
file.
To receive, place,
Yep.
and file? Okay, I'll move to do that.
I'll second that.
All right. For the discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Item number 11, request by Department of Public Works to approve the proposed cross-section for Gray Street and to authorize a consultant to complete the design work, including the project plans, specifications, estimate and all required Wisconsin Department of Transportation reports, and to make a recommendation to the city council. Staff?
Okay, what we've included in your packet is a typical cross-section for Gray Street as it exists today, and the lower part of the sheet shows what the proposed cross-section is. We have held a public information meeting within the last couple of weeks and went through this with interested parties. We've also met with the alders of the district for both Gray and Mather to go through it with them. Biggest difference, or the biggest thing that we have going, existing on Gray Street, typical, is a 36-foot face-to-face. So from face of gutter to face of, or face of curb to face of curb is 36 feet. We don't want to have to acquire real estate out here. That would, the timing that's inherent in real estate acquisition or the WISDOT process would put us outside the time window to get this project complete. And bear in mind, there is a significant amount of federal funds available on this project. So we have to hit their time windows. What we'd like to do, our recommendation is to hold that same 36-foot clear cross-section. So the curb lines would essentially remain in the same spot that they are along the length of the street. What's going to happen is, because of the federal funding involved, we have to include bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. So you can accomplish bike accommodation. Now, pedestrians are being accommodated along the entire length already. So the sidewalks, by keeping the cross-section, the clear width of the roadway the same, we don't have to move the sidewalks.
Right. Yeah, that would be
So that's helpful.
expensive.
It also maintains the terrace in essentially the same width and configuration. There's a couple of minor modifications to that, but for the most part, the terrace stays the same as it is today as well. What we have to do is provide sufficient width for an on-street bike facility of some sort. So you can provide a dedicated bike lane, or you can provide a widened outside curb lane. Now, what we have found anecdotally is the widened outside curb lanes typically cause excessive speed, because
It's a
if a
wider
bicycle is not present, the motorist simply sees a wider pavement. What we can do here on Gray is go with 12-foot travel lanes as opposed to the 10-foot lanes that are out there right now. Narrow up that outside lane from 8 feet to 6 feet, so we still have the same width, and provide the stripe, the white stripe denoting the bicycle facility, and provide the on-street bike accommodations.
Would that be two stripes? I mean, would it, for the bike lane?
There will be a stripe on each side.
Right.
Correct.
With a little symbol
Yeah.
typically.
Correct.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't be looking ahead, but it's just kind of, I just wanted to see how Mather and Gray would relate to one another, as they do intersect, Mather and Gray.
They will share a common cross-section.
And apparently with Gray, we're having 12-foot travel lanes, in Mather 11-foot. In either case, they're wider than the 10-foot ones that exist right now. And on Mather, we're having 7-foot bike lanes, whereas Gray has 6-foot bike lanes.
Isn't there something with the parking though?
Nope.
Mather?
It has to do with the material of construction. Gray is anticipated, because Gray is a arterial,
Okay.
Gray is anticipated to be concrete. With a concrete pavement, you can include the gutter into the width of the lane. On an asphalt street, because it goes from asphalt
Yeah.
to concrete,
Okay.
that
It's a
joint
differentiation.
could cause disruption in a bicycle, so you cannot include the gutter pan as part of the width, so we have
It's the
to.
type of material.
Got it, that makes sense.
We have to
Actually.
create
Now
a
you have
foot.
to adjust for that.
It is.
You can actually
Learn
see it
something
on
new.
the thing
I
now.
know.
Now that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense now.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Not so much a concern on Gray, more so a concern under the next item with Mather.
Well,
If we
we're
don't acquire
Qualifications.
right-of-way, the installation of the bicycle facility means the loss of on-street parking.
That seemed to be the complaint that I saw. How was that?
And what we actually found when we received the comments back, it was about a 50-50 split. Folks didn't like the fact that they weren't going to have the on-street parking, but the loss of the federal funding, which would result in a higher assessment rate, offset that loss of parking.
Was there a number roughly as far as what the adjustment would be? Percentage-wise, maybe?
For gray,
You know, like I said, with those two different options.
well, with gray, 4 people wanted to keep parking on one side, 4 people wanted to keep the bike lanes.
Okay.
1 person wanted to keep the bike lane but reduce it in size, which we can't do.
Yeah.
Only 2 people said don't put bike lanes in. 3 people indicated that they wanted to keep the trees. 1 person indicated that they didn't want to widen the street. 2 of them said keep parking as is.
It's like a dartboard.
And 2 people wanted to make sure we kept parking by the church.
Okay.
Yeah, which, that's random.
On Mather, it got even worse. 1 person wanted no parking, 1 person wanted no bike lane, 2 people said keep parking as is. 1 person said bike lane and parking lane.
But I guess the question I asked was, what's the difference, you know, when you
You're
say.
talking about the cost to the resident,
assessment,
right?
Or the,
You're talking about the assessment cost to the resident,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
With the assessment, I can't tell you what the
That's-
cost impact is going to be.
or just
This is an 80-20 cost share between
federal.
the feds and the city. In general, we have seen, when we did Military Avenue and Velp Avenue, I think the assessments came in at about 20% of what they otherwise would have been.
So,
It's a good deal.
So it's substantial. There's a substantial reduction in what the assessments are versus what they would be if there was no federal funding.
but it seemed like when the citizens understood that, they seemed to be a little better with it.
Yeah,
Okay. I know there's a number of issues with this. We had people that were worried about the church as well. I
Correct.
agree,
Yeah,
as far
and
as
not having
cutting
parking, yep.
cutting into that area, and it sounded like we handled that pretty well.
and the reason that this becomes important at this point is because if we accept this as our design cross-section,
That's it.
this is it. We authorize the consultant to turn it loose, and the next time we talk about it is when we have the assessment hearings.
You don't
This is time
antici-
sensitive.
Correct.
Yes, because of the
So-
grants too.
Right.
You don't anticipate any speed limit changes with
No,
the different widths and that, okay.
I'm in favor of it because of a couple of reasons. One is the grant funding, I think, or the federal funding, I think, is a fantastic piece of this. Secondly, I'm an advocate for the bike lanes. It's more of a personal preference, but I know there's been increased demand for that throughout the community. So
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
To approve.
let's just do 11 first, I think.
Let's do the 11.
Yeah. So do you want to?
I would make a motion to approve the proposed cross-section for Gray Street
Okay.
and to authorize the consultant to complete the design work.
All right.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion, a second on number 11. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 12, I know we've kind of talked about, but I got to read it out quick. Request by Department of Public Works to approve the proposed cross-section for the Mather Street and to authorize the consultant to complete the design work, including the project plans, specifications, estimate, and all required Wisconsin Department of Transportation reports, and to make a recommendation to the City Council.
Make a motion to approve.
In a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Greener. All right, item 13, request by the Department of Public Works to award 6-month contract extension for engineering staff augmentation services to Patrick Engineering, Inc. Staff?
in July of last year, we brought forward a proposal to
Yes.
execute a contract with Patrick Engineering for staff augmentation services, whereby Patrick provided an engineer who sat here in our offices and worked side by side with our staff. That was a 6-month contract in the amount of $100,000, and that contract had provisions for up to 2 6-month extensions. However, we did indicate to you at the time that any extensions would be brought back to committee prior to executing. What we found is we've gotten some good, solid work out of that contract. That contract is due to expire, and the work backlog is still there, or there's still a need to have that person engaged. While we're up to full staff within DPW, and we've endeavored as much as possible to keep our in-house staff completely engaged on some of the public works projects that have been lacking. We've taken this consultant and largely targeted that person towards completing the outstanding park projects. So this will continue to help us attack the list of park projects, specifically those out at Bay Beach. So we're asking for authorization to offer a 6-month contract extension to Patrick Engineering, again in the amount of $100,000.
I would make that motion.
Second.
All right, very good. Motion is second for number 13. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Sorry. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. I know that Parks and Rec will be very pleased with that as well.
Yes.
Item 14, approval of a contract for construction materials testing for 2016 through 2017. Staff?
We go out on a biannual basis to solicit proposals from construction materials testing firms to provide those services on city construction contracts. And typical services offered by those firms would include testing of concrete cylinders for compressive strength, density testing, or preparation of proctored tests which give us the target values for density testing. We did go out again for the 2016-2017 year. 3 proposals were received: American Engineering Testing, River Valley Testing, and Bay Area Testing and Consulting, all 3 local firms. We reviewed those proposals by comparing the costs of the service for a typical or a sample construction project. When those proposals were reviewed, they were determined all to be responsive and evaluated. AET, American Engineering Testing, is the incumbent consultant, and we've developed a pretty good relationship with them. We've got their billing processes down pat, things of that nature. However, they did come in a little bit more expensive than Bay Area Testing and Consulting. So Bay Area was not able to bid on, or not able to propose the last time we went out, because they did not have an on-staff registered professional engineer. We do rely on that technical expert to help us with geotechnical related issues that we encounter during testing. So our recommendation at this time is, based on the information provided, that we contract with Bay Area Testing and Consulting for the 2016-2017 construction season.
Okay, I'd make a motion to approve that recommendation.
All right.
I would second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
And that would obviously authorize me to execute that.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
All right, item 16, application for concrete sidewalk builders licenses by the following. A, IEI General Contractors, Inc., I almost said EIA. Item B, Larry Van Wright Trucking and Excavating, Inc., C, Martel Construction, Inc., D, Northern Concrete Construction, E, Summers Construction Company, Inc. Any issues?
All applicants have held sidewalk builders license with us in the past, and we recommend approval.
All right.
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 17, application for tree and brush trimmer licenses by the following. A, Four Season Tree Care. B, Esplenda Tree Expert. C, Beaver Tree Specialists. D, Big Boys Landscape and Snow Services LLC. E, Fall Right Services. Ouch. F, Hutch. G, Selner Tree and Shrub Care LLC. H, Timber Edge Tree and Shrub Care. I, True Green. Staff, any issues?
No, again, this year Hutch has decided to go it alone and not bring Starsky, but
Dang, you got me.
I was waiting for that. You
We
did.
make that joke every year, though. That's the problem.
yes.
All your timber was duly noted.
Thank you.
And move to approve.
Any
Second.
seconds? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Director's report, my favorite part.
Very brief. Just wanted to keep you apprised that we are working on, as part of the budget for 2016, We did bring forward an identification that we were going to do some minor reorganization and create a utility section to address primarily the issues that we had talked about, both under storm and sanitary. So we are working with HR on that reorg process. We are currently moving forward with speccing out the equipment to replace our parking access revenue control system, as we discussed a couple of meetings ago. So we hope to have specs through the purchasing department and have some numbers to bring forward to the committee in the very near future. We've had another rash of retirements and resignations with both within our engineering, admin sections and within operations, so staff is busy recruiting to backfill those positions. Happy to report that for the most part across the city, we are back to bare pavement on almost all streets across the city. Staff has been out actively working on getting inlets open again, so with additional snowfall or onset of warm weather,
It's not gonna
that stuff
work.
has a place to go. And engineering staff continues to work on the capital improvement program, and we hope to bring that forward in early April for approval.
All right, do we have a motion to receive and place on file?
Yes,
Director's report?
receive and place on file.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mark.
Wow. It's like my second one.
Look at you. Almost by.
You know what it's like? I feel like it's in a baseball